All right, so we are starting with the market forces today. Demand, uh, that's for consumers, and then supply to is for sellers or the producers. So before we are done with this, we should be able to distinguish between quantity demanded and demand. So we'll look at what quantity demanded is, what demand is, and explain what determines demand. What are the factors that actually affect the demand for a commodity? Then we move on to the sellers. So we distinguish between quantities applied and then what supply actually is, and explain the factors that actually affect the quantity that sellers wish or desire to offer for sale. Then we combine the two. Okay, so when we combine supply and demand, they determine the equilibrium price and the quantity in the market for whatever commodity in question. Then lastly, we will explain the effects of changes in demand and then changes in supply, and then how these changes actually affect equilibrium price and then equilibrium quantity. So first, we'll start with demand. Okay, we'll start with demand. But first, let's look at what a market is. Then we have different types of markets, but here we'll concentrate on competitive market. Now, socially, market is just a space where buying and selling happens. Okay, in economics, we go beyond that. It is not just where we go to buy and sell, but then any arrangement that brings buyers and sellers together. So it's possible it is not a physical point that people go, as we know, for markets. I mean, you walk there, you go there, go and buy whatever you want. But then in economics, it is broader than that. That's why we have online markets. You don't see people going there, but we have people all around the world buying and selling online at the same time. So that's an arrangement that is bringing the buyers and then the sellers together. Okay, so it's possible, as stated here, it's even possible that the buyer might never see the seller, but then it's a market. It's just the arrangement that brought them together that makes it a market. Okay, so for competitive markets, these are markets that have a lot of buyers and sellers. Okay, we have a lot of people selling and then a lot of people buying. And the effect of such a market is that no single buyer or seller has the power to control price. Okay, because we have a lot of or many buyers and sellers, no single individual, no single seller, no single consumer can actually control the market price. So the market price is determined by the market forces. What's the quantity that people are buying? What's the quantity that people are selling? That will determine the price at which the good will be traded. So that is competitive markets. We have other markets. A monopoly market, we have just one firm in the market, but then we can have many buyers. But the person selling that good is just one. We have monopoly, where we have only one buyer. So we can have multiple sellers, but then only one buyer. And those markets are quite hard to come by. We have oligopoly, where we have fewer sellers of the commodity. So an example of duopoly oligopoly is duopoly, where we have only two sellers of. So there are quite a number of markets. The two extreme cases are the competitive markets, and then the most imperfect market is the monopoly market. But then in between these two, we have different forms of markets. But for the sake of this lesson, we focus on a competitive market. Okay. So let's begin with demand. What is quantity demanded? Okay. Now, when we talk about quantity demanded, we are talking about the amount of being it a good, a service, or a resource that people are willing and able to buy during a specific period at a specific price. Okay, so if you take a service like maybe health service, what will be the quantity of health services that people are willing and able to buy within a particular time? So demand is measured over an interval of time. What is the demand for the day? Demand per week, per month, per year. So it is measured over time. Okay, and then we look at the different quantities that people will buy at whatever price that the market says. Now, we need to take note of these two words, willingness and ability. Okay. Now, if you see a good or a service or a particular resource, and you desire it, you wish you had it. If you don't have the purchasing power, if you don't have money to buy, that is not demand. It's just a want. Okay, so demand. So demand should, one, be backed by the willingness of the consumer or the individual to buy, and then the ability to buy it. So you desire the commodity, and you also have the purchasing power, the money, the ability to actually pay for it. Okay, so that is the quantity demanded of a commodity. So as I was saying, it is measured per unit of time. It can be within a day, a month, a year, a decade, or whatever specific time that we want to measure it. Okay, right. Then we have the law of demand. The law of demand. Okay. Now, before we define the law of demand, we hold an assumption. We hold all other factors affecting demand constant. Then we only vary the price of the commodity in question. Okay. In Latin, they call it ceteris paribus. So we hold everything constant. It's just an assumption. It doesn't really work in the real world like that. There are other factors that affect demand, but then the law of demand only connects the price of the commodity and then the quantity demanded of that commodity. So what does this law state? It states that if the price of the good rises, then the quantity demanded of that good will decrease. So at a higher price, we tend to buy fewer quantities of the good in question. That is one side. Whenever there's an increase in price, we tend to buy less. And then the other side is that whenever there's a fall in price, then the quantity demanded of that good increases. So this points out a negative relationship between the quantity demanded of a good and the price. Whenever price goes up, we should expect a reduction in quantity demanded and vice versa. Okay, so that is the law of demand. I hope that is fine. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now let's look at the demand schedule and then the demand curve. Okay. Now, when we take demand is just the relationship between the quantity demanded and then the price of the good. When we hold all other factors affecting demand constant. So we are just showing the relationship between the quantity demanded of the good and then the price of the good. So how do we show this? This relationship can be shown in a tabular form, what we call the demand schedule, or in a graphical form, what we call the demand curve. And at times too, in the mathematical way, we call it demand equation. Okay, later on when we are looking at the mathematical economics, we'll deal with those ones too. Okay, so here we'll look at the demand schedule and then the demand curve. Okay, so this relationship called demand, the relationship between the quantity demanded and price will be depicted by demand schedule and the demand curve. So what's a demand schedule? Okay, it's just a list, the tabular representation of the quantities demanded at each different price. Okay, so we have different prices, then we have different quantity demanded at those prices. So the table showing these lists is what we call the demand schedule. But then we shouldn't forget that we are holding all the other factors constant. We are only looking at the relationship between price and the quantity demanded. And then the demand curve is a graphical representation of this same relationship between quantity demanded of a good and then its price. And of course, we hold the other factors constant. Okay, so this is how we represent demand. Okay, it can either be in a tabular form or it can be in a graphical form. So let's look at the schedule. The left one is the schedule, and then the right one here is the graph. So we have the prices of the good is a bottle of water, and then the quantity demanded. This is being measured per day. Remember, we said demand is measured per unit of time. Okay. So now, when the price of the good was 2, when the price of the commodity was 2, the quantity demanded was 0. Okay. So now, when you come to the graph, the vertical line is the price line, and then the horizontal line is the quantity line. Okay. So we just translate the schedule to the graph at a price of 2. So here the price is 2. What is quantity demanded? It is 0. So there was no quantity bought at a price of 2. Now let's go to another price. At point B, price was 1.5. Quantity demanded was 1. So you see where point B is. So 1.5, quantity demanded was 1. If we go to point C, price was 1, and then the quantity demanded was 2. So we come to point C, 1 and then 2. And then you see, so that is what we do. We keep on getting the points on the graph. So what we have here, this table here, is the demand schedule. And then a line drawn through these points is what we call the demand curve. So you see how the demand curve looks like. It's sloping downwards. What this means is that there's a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. As price is falling, okay, if you look at this, as price falls, okay, we see an increase in what? In the quantity demanded. Now, if there's supposed to be an increase in price, then you see that the quantity demanded will be what? Will be falling. Okay, so the graph is supposed to show the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. If you look at the table too, the same thing. As price falls, we see quantity demanded what? Increasing. If we move from here to here to price is increasing, quantity demanded will be decreasing. So these are the two ways in which we depict the demand. That's the relationship between price and quantity demanded. All right, now let's look at individual demand and the market demand. Now, we are looking at a competitive market, so we have a lot of sellers, we have a lot of buyers. So now the demand is talking about the quantities that individuals are buying. So if you go to a market, assuming you even have just 2 people, 2 buyers in the market, buyer A will have his demand, and then buyer B will also have his demand. So the individual demand is talking about the quantities that an individual will buy at each price. Okay, then that's the individual demand. But then the market demand is talking about the summation of all the individual demands. Okay, so we sum them up to get the market demand. So if you have 20 people demanding for that particular good, if you want to get the market demand, you sum up all the quantities that those 20 people buy. That will give you the market demand. So it's the sum of the demands of all the buyers in the market. Now, graphically, it's just the horizontal summation of the demand curves of all the buyers. So you draw the individual demand curve for each buyer, then we sum them horizontally to actually get the market demand. Let's look at an example. Now, this is the demand schedule for Tina and then Tim. Okay, so this is the demand curve for Tina. This is for Tim. When price was 2, Tina didn't buy anything at all, so 0. Okay, this guy too bought 0. Now when price came to 1.5, Tina bought 1, so Tina 1.5, 1. But then for Tim, he still didn't buy anything at all. Then when price came to 1, you see that Tina bought what? 2, right? And this guy bought 1. Okay, 1 in that order. Price reduced again, and then they increase them. So this is the individual demand curve for Tina. This is the individual demand curve for Tim. Then there's a schedule for Tina. There's a schedule for Tim. So now, if you want the market schedule, okay, if you want the market one, what do we do? Assuming we start from when price was 2, they all didn't buy anything at all. So if you come to the market demand curve, when price was 2, the quantity there was 0. Now, when price was 1.5, if you want to find the market quantity, you add what Tina bought and what Tim bought. Tina bought 1. Tim didn't buy anything at all. So the market demand here is going to be what? 1. So when price was 1.5, you see that the market demand was 1. So we have 1 here. Then we go to when price was 1. Tina bought 2. Tim bought 1. So we add the 2 to get what? The market demand. So when price is 1, this is the market demand. Okay, are we together?
Yes.
Good. Then when price was 0.4, Tina bought 3 quantities, and then Tim bought 2. When we add them, we are getting what? 5. So 0.5 at the price of 0.5, then the market demand was what? 5. So when we draw a line through these points, we get our market demand. Okay, so we just sum the demand for the individual demands, and then that gives us our market demand. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's look at changes in demand. Now, we'll have a change in demand when there's a change in the quantity that people desire to buy. Okay, and this change will be caused by changes in the other factors affecting demand apart from price. You see, shortly we'll look at the factors affecting demand. Okay, now we'll have a change in demand when the price of the commodity is constant. The price hasn't changed, but then people are desiring to change the quantity that they buy. That is a change in demand. Remember the law. Whenever there's a change in price, there's supposed to be a change in quantity demanded. Okay, when price goes up, quantity demanded will fall, and vice versa. But it's also possible that price wouldn't change at all, yet people will change the quantity that they buy. When it happens like that, that is where we have a change in demand. So price is constant, but then the other factors affecting demand will rather change, and that should cause a change in the quantity that people desire to buy. Okay, so what this means is that if the price isn't changing, yet we are changing the quantity we buy, we need to draw a new demand schedule. Okay, whenever we draw a new demand schedule, it means we have a new demand curve. Okay, so change in demand will initiate the drawing of a new demand schedule and then a new demand curve. So let's look at this. This is the initial demand curve. Okay, this is the initial demand curve. Now, let's look at this one. What is happening here? Assuming that initially the price was, let's use price of 1.5. No, let's use 1. Okay, at the price of 1. Okay, initially, assuming the quantity was 10. Are we together?
Yes.
Good. Now, at the same price of $1, the price, the quantity that the people are buying has reduced from 10 to 8. There is no change in price. So this is a change in demand. Okay, so the demand curve has shifted from the old one, which is D0, to what? D1. So we have what? We have a change in demand. And remember, change can be positive, it can be negative. So this one is a negative one. A decrease, we call it a decrease in demand, where the quantity that we desire to buy decreases as a result of changes in the other factors. So that will cause the demand curve to shift leftwards. So it shifts from D0 to D1. Are we together?
Yes.
0 to D1. So this is a decrease in demand. Now, let's look at this one too. Initially, okay, the quantity was at 10. We're buying 10 at the price of 1. But if you look at this now, we are buying maybe 12.5 or something. So at the same price of 1, we have increased the quantity that we desire to buy. So this is an increase in demand. And we have drawn a new demand curve, D2. So this one will have an increase in demand when the demand curve shifts to the right. When the demand curve shifts to the right. Are we together?
Yes.
To the right. Okay. All right. So this is a change in demand. Change in demand. All right. Now let's look at the factors affecting demand. The first one is the price of related commodities. Okay, of course, the price itself is part. That is what the law uses. Okay, so that's one we already know, that the price of the commodity will definitely affect the demand for that commodity. And at a higher price, we buy less, and at a lower price, we buy more. But also, prices of other related goods that are related to the good in question, can also affect the demand for that good. We'll look at them. And then expected future prices. When we expect that prices will change in the future, it affects our demand now. We'll look at that. And then income. Your income level also affects your demand. Then expected future income and credits. If you expect changes in your future income, it should affect your consumption now. So it will affect your demand. And then if there's ready credit, there's low cost of borrowing, that one too can affect your demand. We will shortly look at that. And of course, the number of buyers. You see, when we are talking about the demand here, it's mostly the market demand we are talking about. So the number of buyers in the market will definitely affect the total demand in this market. So the number of buyers too is there. And then preferences, our preferences. If your preference really favors a particular commodity, you tend to demand more. But if your preference should change in a negative way concerning that particular good, you tend to buy less. So we'll take them one after the other, and then we'll explain how they actually affect the demand of a good. So let's look at the first one. The first one is the prices of related goods. Okay. Now, this one, we face it from two fronts. Goods are related mostly in two ways. It's either the two goods are competitively demanded, or they are jointly or complemented, or they are in complementary demand. Okay. Now, two goods are said to be in competitive demand when they serve the same purpose. If they serve the same purpose, then it means that we can consume one instead of the other. Okay. It's either we consume good A or we consume B. We are getting the same satisfaction. So we say that they are competitively demanded. If you have two goods like that, those two goods are called substitutes. The goods are called what? Substitutes. We have a lot of them. Here in Ghana, we can talk about Milo, we can talk about this way, or even Richoko. It's either you use Milo or you use Richoko. Okay, so whichever one that you want, that's what you go for. Okay. So those are substitutes. So definitely, if you take Milo and this way, definitely, the price of Milo would definitely affect the quantity of this way that people will buy. So let's take this example. We are taking Milo. Let's put Milo here. Let's put this way here. Okay. Now, assuming we have 20 people in this market, in the market for Milo, and then this way, their prices are all $1 each. Per tin, $1. Okay. $1. Now, let's share the consumers equally. So 10 people were buying 10 tins of Milo, and then 10 people were buying 10 tins of this way. Now, just assuming that the price of Milo increases to 1.5. Okay, increases to 1.5. But then the price of this way is at 1. Okay. Now, definitely, because the two goods are serving the same purpose, some people will stop buying Milo and then they will come and buy what? This way. So just assuming that some people don't like this way at all. So for them, no matter what, they will still buy Milo. But then 5 of them will leave. So we'll no longer have 10 people buying 10 tins of Milo, but then only 5 people. These 5 people will now go and buy what? Will now go and buy this way. So now we'll have 15 people buying this way at the same price of what? 1. The price hasn't changed, yet people are buying more. Why? Because of an increase in the price of a substitute. Okay? Because of an increase in the price of what? Of a substitute. Now there's an increase in demand for this particular good. The price hasn't changed at all, yet we are now buying more. Is that okay?
Yes.
So the takeaway is that whenever there's an increase in the price of a substitute, there will be an increase in the demand for the other good. Now, assuming there's a fall in price, so now Milo is $0.5. 0.5. Now, a lot of people will come and buy Milo. So it's possible that 5 people will stop buying this way, and then they'll come and buy Milo. So 15 people will be buying Milo, and only 5 people will buy what? This way. The price of this way hasn't changed, yet demand has fallen. People are buying less. Why? Because of a fall in the price of a substitute. So the takeaway here too is that whenever there's a fall in price of a substitute, there is a fall in demand for the other good. Is that okay?
Yes.
Very good. So that is that. The demand for a good will increase if the price of a substitute rises, and vice versa. Then we can talk about joint demand. Now, 2 goods are jointly demanded when they are consumed together to attain a certain level of satisfaction. Okay. Now, we have 2 types. When the goods are like that, we call them complements. Okay. We have 2 types. We have perfect and then imperfect. For the perfect ones, technically, you cannot use one without the other. Something like a car and then a fuel. You cannot use a car without a fuel. So they are always consumed together. They are jointly consumed. But then the imperfect ones, we can talk about a socks and a shoe. You can wear a shoe without a socks. You can wear a socks without a shoe too. But then we consume them together. But technically, one doesn't need the other. We can choose to wear one without wearing the other one. Okay. So how would the price of one affect the other? Let's take car and then fuel. Okay. Assuming that we only use fuel to power cars. It's just that we don't use fuel for anything again. So let's assuming that initially, let me write this. This is car. This is the market for cars, and then this is for fuel. Okay, this is for fuel. So the price of a car was initially, let's say, $5. Okay, and then the quantity was 10, and then the price of a fuel was also 5. And then where the quantity too was 10, we're buying 10 gallons, assuming we need 1 gallon for one car. Okay. So now, price is 5 for car. We are buying 10, so we needed 10 gallons of fuel. Now, assuming there's an increase in the price of car to say $10. Now, per the law of demand, whenever there's an increase in the price, we are supposed to buy less, right? So assuming we buy only 5 units of cars now. Now, we wouldn't need 10 gallons of fuel. We only need 5. The price of fuel hasn't changed, but then we have reduced its demand. So what is happening here? There was an increase in the price of what? Of a complement. And as a result, there's a reduction in the demand for fuel. But then there's no change in the price of fuel. So whenever there's an increase in the price of a complement, there's a reduction in the demand for the good in question. Is that okay?
Yes.
If you check the other side too, if the price of cars should fall, then we'll buy more cars, which means that we need what? We need more fuel. Okay, so when the price of a complement falls, we see an increase in the demand for the other good. Okay, so this is how prices of related commodities can actually affect the demand of another good. Okay, you have to, if you want to use this point, you have to explain the two, the complements and then the substitute, because they are not the same. They work in opposite directions. Okay. All right, so that is for price of related goods. Now, expected future prices. See, this thing it's normally it normally happens. Assuming we hear that next week they are going to increase prices. If you have money now, what are you going to do? You buy more. Don't you buy more? You want to buy more to escape the increase in price. So whenever we expect an increase in price in the future, we demand more now. Okay, we tend to what? Demand more now, because we just want to escape the increase in price. But what if we expect a fall in price in the future? We wouldn't buy the thing at all. We would like to wait in order to take advantage of the falling price in the future. So if we expect that future prices are going to fall, then the demand for the good currently will be very low. We'll decrease our demand now. Okay, so this is how expectation of future prices affects current demand. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Then income. For income too, we have to talk about the relationship between goods and income. We have normal goods, we have inferior goods. For normal goods, we tend to buy more whenever there's an increase in our income. Okay, that's for normal goods. So if you have more money, you buy more. But then for inferior goods, we buy less when our income rather increases. So this one, if you want to use this, you have to talk about these two goods. So for normal goods, when we have more money, we demand more. But then if we have less money, we demand less. For an inferior good, with an increase in income, we buy less. But then with a decrease in income, we rather what? Buy more. So you can't just stand up and say that if you have more money, you buy more of a good. No, you have to know the particular good in question. We even have necessities, the goods that we cannot do without. Those ones, they don't even depend on income. Something like sugar, salt. You can't say that now you have a lot of money. So when you are preparing soup, you put like 10 bottles of salt because now you have a lot of money. Or when you are preparing tea, you put a lot of sugar inside because now you have a lot of money. No. Or now you have money, so you drink a lot of water. No. It doesn't work like that. And you can't also say that you don't have any money at all. So when you are preparing soup, you won't put salt inside. No. You still get some. So for necessities, they don't depend on income at all. But for normal goods and inferior goods, they do depend on the income level. But then you have to talk about both normal and then inferior goods. And then expected future income and credit. Now, if you expect an increase in income in the future, it will boost your consumption now. You start to what? Increase your demand because you are consuming against your future income. You do that a lot. And then if we can easily get credit, if you can easily borrow money at a very low cost, people tend to borrow more and then they tend to increase their demand. Okay, so when we expect future income, we tend to consume more, so the demand is high and vice versa. Okay, vice versa. Now, whenever you ask to explain factors affecting demand, you have to talk about them from both sides. Okay, from both sides. You talk about the left side and then the right side, the increase part and then the decrease part. Okay. Then we can talk about number of buyers. Of course, this one is straightforward. If you have a lot of buyers, then we tend to have a larger demand for the good and vice versa. Now, there are some books, instead of number of buyers, they use population, which is wrong. If you want to talk about population, you have to hold other things constant. You have to hold some assumptions. It's possible. Let's take a country like Ghana and Nigeria. Population-wise, Nigeria is more than us. I think they are around 150 million. We are around 30 million. Assuming the good in question is baby diapers. So when we talk about population, we just say that because Nigeria has a higher population, demand for diapers will be more than that of Ghana. It can be true, it can be false too. Assuming that out of the 150 million, we only have 10 million children. But Ghana, out of the 30 million, we have 50 million children. So out of these two, which country will need more diapers? It will be Ghana, right? It will be Ghana. Sure. Our population is low though, but then the market for that particular good is higher than that of Nigeria. That's why we prefer using number of buyers. So here 15 people are buying, here 10 people are buying. So this one will be higher than this one. Okay, so you take note of that as well. And then preferences. If your preference actually favor a particular good, you tend to buy more. Okay, but then you just know that as your preference is positively shifting towards a good, it is negatively shifting away from another good as well. Okay, so our preferences to what we want, what we desire, actually affects our demand for whatever we request. Okay. Now, when do preferences change? Okay, they change when there are new goods on the market and also when we are better informed. Okay, now initially maybe you liked a particular product because you didn't know much about it. Now you've heard that the product is this and that, a lot of allegations. you see that you just change your preference. You stop buying that one. And then it's possible that initially we didn't have much goods and services on the market. So we just have to prefer the ones that were there. But now we have new goods. So we can change our preference. We can tend to go for the new goods. Okay, so our preferences can change when we now have better information about the product or when there are new products on the market. Okay, so those are some of the factors that affect demand. Okay, there are other factors. We can even talk about weather conditions. There are some goods you buy them based on weather conditions. Okay, something like those cold foods. Okay, those cold foods. When it gets to winter, who is going to buy cold food? Okay, we don't do that. If you take something like umbrella, if we are using it for rain, then we'll buy more during the rainy season than when it is not raining at all. You understand? So there are other factors to that affect demand as well. Now let's look at the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Okay, change in demand. Now we have a change in quantity demanded when there's a change in the quantity that people desire to buy. Okay, as a result of a change in price of that good. We know that whenever price changes, there will be a change in the quantity that we buy. That change is called change in quantity demanded because it was as a result of a change in price. But then we have change in demand. It's possible we'll change the quantity that we want to buy, but then it wouldn't be as a result of a change in price. I think we spoke about change in demand. So when there are changes in the other factors affecting demand, other than price, that's a change in demand. But then when we hold all the other factors constant, but then there's a change in price, and as a result, we change the quantity we want to buy. We call that one change in quantity demanded. So that is the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Change in quantity demanded results from a change in price. Change in demand results from changes in the other factors affecting demand. Okay, let's look at the diagram here. Now, initially, okay, assuming the price was $1, and just assuming this was the quantity that we're buying, 10. Now, assuming price increases, when price increases to 2, we can no longer buy 10. We'll buy what? We'll buy 9. We call this a decrease in quantity demanded. Okay, the quantity that we wish to buy has reduced. Why? Because of an increase in price. So this one will move along the demand curve, will move upwards. So we reduce the quantity that we buy. If price should fall from 1 to 0.5, now you see that we are buying more. Let's say we are buying 11. So this one, there's an increase in quantity demanded here because of what? A fall in price. So movement along the demand curve is called change in quantity demanded. This one, we don't draw any new demand curve. No, it's just the old one that we move along. Okay, so that is for a decrease in quantity demanded, and then an increase in quantity demanded. Then we have a decrease in demand. Okay, I think we looked at this. Now, if initially this was the price and this was the quantity, okay, at the same price, you see that we are buying less. So there's a decrease in demand. So the demand curve shifts to the left. And these are some of the reasons or some of the causes of such a shift. It's possible the price of a substitute has fallen.